When The Godfather arrived in theaters in 1972, it did not simply succeed. It redefined what American cinema could be. Audiences were drawn into a brutal and intimate portrait of power, loyalty, and moral decay, told with a seriousness rarely seen in crime films before. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece almost immediately, and its influence spread far beyond Hollywood. The film became a cultural event, a benchmark against which generations of movies would be measured. At the heart of that phenomenon were three performances that felt unforgettable from the moment they appeared on screen. Marlon Brando, portraying Vito Corleone, delivered a performance so commanding it erased years of industry doubt about him. At the time, Brando was considered difficult and unreliable, a star whose reputation for chaos nearly cost him the role. The Godfather restored his artistic credibility overnight, but it also marked the beginning of a final chapter defined by personal loss, family tragedy, and a gradual retreat from the world that once worshipped him. Alongside him was Al Pacino, an almost unknown stage actor chosen over far more famous names. His transformation into Michael Corleone was quiet, chilling, and revolutionary. Fame followed instantly, but so did a lifelong struggle with pressure, depression, and the fear that his identity had been swallowed by one role he could never truly escape. Then there was James Caan, whose violent and impulsive Sonny Corleone burned brightly and briefly. Caan became an overnight symbol of raw masculine energy, yet his rise was soon overshadowed by rumors of excess, substance abuse, and conflicts that slowed his momentum and reshaped his career in unexpected ways. Together, these men helped create one of the most celebrated films in history. Separately, their lives after The Godfather moved in darker and more complicated directions. Fame magnified their flaws as much as their talent. Hollywood celebrated them, then quietly watched as each faced the consequences of sudden immortality. This episode of Hollywood Revisited looks beyond the legend to ask a question rarely explored. What really happened to the three stars of The Godfather after the applause faded? And how did one perfect film change their lives forever? Actor 1. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando was born in 1924 into a troubled Midwestern family where emotional instability shaped him long before Hollywood ever did. His childhood was marked by neglect, alcoholism, and a deep sense of rebellion that later became inseparable from his screen presence. By the time he reached New York, Brando was not just studying acting, he was dismantling it, rejecting theatrical tradition, and replacing it with something raw, unpredictable, and painfully human. When he was cast as Vito Corleone, Brando was already famous, but his career was considered toxic. Studios saw him as unmanageable, expensive, and unreliable. Paramount did not want him. The role almost went to someone safer, someone easier. Brando himself treated the audition with indifference, stuffing cotton in his cheeks and improvising a voice that executives initially mocked. That performance changed everything. At 47, Brando transformed a fictional gangster into a tragic patriarch, redefining masculinity, authority, and silence in cinema. The success was immediate and overwhelming. The Godfather restored Brando's artistic reputation and earned him another Academy Award, which he famously refused, igniting controversy and further cementing his image as Hollywood's most defiant star. But while the world celebrated, Brando's private life was already unraveling. Fame did not stabilize him. It isolated him. After the film, Brando continued working, but his performances became sporadic, his behavior increasingly erratic. He gained weight, withdrew from public life, and clashed repeatedly with studios. The industry that once feared him now struggled to accommodate him. Behind closed doors, his family life collapsed. His son, Christian, killed his daughter's boyfriend, and Brando's daughter, Cheyenne, later took her own life. These tragedies shattered him completely. In his later years, Brando lived largely in seclusion, physically frail and emotionally distant. The man who once dominated the screen now avoided it. He spoke openly about regret, about the emptiness of fame, and about how Hollywood had taken far more than it ever gave back. When he died in 2004 at the age of 80, the world mourned a legend, but few understood how heavy the burden of that legend had been. Marlon Brando did not just play power in The Godfather, he carried it. And in the end, it cost him more than anyone ever saw. Actor 2, Al Pacino. Al Pacino was born in New York City in 1940 and raised in the Bronx by a single mother after his parents divorced. Money was scarce, his neighborhood was unforgiving, and acting became both an escape and a form of survival. Long before Hollywood noticed him, Pacino was a dedicated stage actor, obsessive about craft and deeply insecure about his place in the world. He believed in discipline, anonymity, and disappearing into characters rather than becoming a star. When he was cast as Michael Corleone, Pacino was 31 years old and virtually unknown to mainstream audiences. Studio executives wanted him fired almost immediately, calling him too short, too quiet, and not masculine enough. He felt the pressure constantly, aware that one wrong move could end his career before it began. Yet what emerged on screen was revolutionary. Pacino's Michael was cold, restrained, and terrifying in his silence. It was a performance built on internal collapse rather than explosive violence. The success of The Godfather changed his life overnight. Fame arrived suddenly and aggressively, something Pacino had never wanted. Offers flooded in, awards followed, and critics declared him the most serious actor of his generation. But away from the cameras, he struggled. He feared being exposed as a fraud. He feared losing artistic control. And most of all, he feared being trapped by Michael Corleone forever. In the years that followed, Pacino chased difficult roles, often choosing intensity over commercial safety. He battled depression, exhaustion, and long periods of emotional withdrawal. Unlike his peers, he avoided marriage and traditional family life, forming intense but unstable relationships. Alcohol became a quiet companion during darker periods, though he rarely spoke about it publicly. As time passed, Pacino remained respected but increasingly solitary. He never fully escaped the shadow of Michael Corleone, a character that defined his genius and imprisoned it at the same time. While his career endured, the cost was internal rather than public. Pacino survived Hollywood, but not without scars. The boy from the Bronx became immortal on screen, yet off-screen he spent a lifetime wrestling with the fear that one perfect role had taken something from him that he could never get back. Actor 3, James Caan. James Caan was born in 1940 in New York City to Jewish immigrant parents who valued discipline, toughness, and survival. From an early age, Caan gravitated toward physical intensity. He studied acting, but also boxing and martial arts, building a persona rooted in strength and volatility. Unlike many of his peers, he carried himself like a fighter rather than an artist, and that edge would define both his greatest success and his deepest struggles. When Caan was cast as Sonny Corleone, he was 31 years old and still searching for a breakthrough. Sonny's explosive temper and brutal honesty felt almost autobiographical. On screen, Caan radiated danger and charisma, creating a character audiences could not ignore. His performance earned him an Academy Award nomination and instant stardom. For a brief moment, it seemed he was destined to become one of Hollywood's most dominant leading men. But fame magnified Caan's recklessness. After The Godfather, he leaned into the excesses of Hollywood life. Stories of heavy drug use, volatile behavior, and clashes with directors began to follow him. Opportunities slipped away as his reputation grew more complicated. While his peers carefully shaped their legacies, Caan often sabotaged his own momentum, choosing freedom and indulgence over stability. Professionally, his career became uneven. He delivered strong performances but never recaptured the cultural impact of Sonny Corleone. Personally, his life was marked by multiple marriages, strained relationships with his children, and long periods of self-imposed isolation. Hollywood did not exile him. He slowly drifted away on his own terms. In his later years, Caan returned to public favor, older, calmer, and reflective. He spoke openly about regret, acknowledging that discipline, not talent, was what he lacked most. When he died in 2022 at the age of 82, tributes poured in celebrating his raw power and unforgettable presence. James Caan burned bright and fast. The Godfather made him immortal, but it was the life he lived afterward that revealed how fragile that immortality truly was. The Godfather did more than change cinema. It changed the lives of the men who carried its weight. For Marlon Brando, the film was both redemption and a final turning point. It restored his artistic authority while marking the beginning of a long withdrawal from the world shaped by unbearable personal loss and a deep mistrust of fame. His legacy became untouchable, but his final years were defined by isolation rather than triumph. For Al Pacino, The Godfather was the birth of a career that never truly slowed, yet never fully set him free. He survived Hollywood by refusing to belong to it completely. While success followed him for decades, the psychological toll of being eternally associated with Michael Corleone remained. His struggle was not public collapse, but an internal battle with pressure, identity, and the fear of artistic emptiness. James Caan's path was the most volatile. The film gave him everything at once and took it away just as quickly. His raw talent and intensity brought instant fame, but his refusal to submit to discipline cost him longevity at the top. Unlike Brando or Pacino, Caan's fall was not tragic or poetic. It was human, messy, and deeply self-inflicted. Three men, one legendary film, three radically different fates. The Godfather promised immortality, but it never promised peace. It rewarded brilliance while exposing weakness. It elevated careers while quietly demanding a price that could only be paid over time. Hollywood celebrated these men for what they gave on screen, yet rarely questioned what it took from them in return. Looking back, the film remains flawless. The performances remain iconic, but the lives behind them tell a far more complicated story. A story about the cost of greatness, the burden of legacy, and the silence that follows applause. Now it's your turn. How do you rate The Godfather on a scale of 10? Which of these three lives do you find most tragic, and which do you believe truly succeeded? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Share this story with those who love classic cinema, and subscribe to Hollywood Revisited for more untold stories behind the films that defined generations.